I want to get to a story that's of huge interest in the city. After a series of sexual misconduct scandals in financial services this year, MPs are investigating sexism in the city. The Aviva CEO, Amanda Blanc, told the Treasury Select Committee that sexism is amplified in finance, including predatory behaviour that targets younger women. Joining us now is the Treasury Select Committee Chair, Harriett Baldwin, Conservative MP since 2010. And just as a reminder, she started out in the city at JP Morgan and was also instrumental in another big report, the Women in Finance Review, between 2017 and 2019, when she was Economic Secretary to the Treasury. So now, on another major investigation into diversity in the city. Welcome to the programme, Harriett Baldwin. What did you make of the Aviva boss, one of the few, a handful, frankly, of FTSE 100 CEOs? She said that sexism has worsened against her as she's become more senior, that harassment targets younger women. Has sexism and women in finance actually gone backwards?
Well, that's exactly why we opened this inquiry, and we're looking specifically at the period since 2018, when the committee last looked at this issue and made recommendations. You know, the view of the committee is that the financial services sector, it's one of the great jewels in the UK economy. It is a fantastic place to work, and it's a place where, in fact, you know, people have very successful careers. People have been well paid, and it's also one where you want to make sure that the UK attracts and retains the very best people from all over the world to work in this sector. And so to do that right, you've obviously got to create a culture where everyone can thrive. And that's why it's so important to our committee to look at how things have changed. What we have picked up in our evidence, and you just summarised very well there, is that there doesn't seem to have been much progress since 2018. That's coming through very clearly in both the data that we've been given in terms of evidence, but also we've been very grateful to some brave women who've come in anonymously and given us off the record evidence that we are summarising anonymously for our inquiry. And we're hearing that despite, you know, the fact that we're in the 21st century, it can still be very challenging for young women at the start of their career. And there are also, you know, points when women have babies that can also be quite challenging. So it's been quite eye-opening.
Harriett, which are the worst sectors for this problem?
Well, interestingly, what we're finding is that the Women in Finance Charter, which was the initiative set up by government back in 2016, launched by Mark Carney when he was Governor of the Bank of England, really important piece of work done by Jane Ann Gardier then. It's interesting that that now covers over 1 million employees in the city. So lots and lots of financial services firms have signed up to that charter. And the charter sets out things that the board will take responsibility for. It's voluntary, but it is now very widely adopted. And in those bigger firms, I think this is taken much more rigorously. What we're finding is we're picking up in some of the smaller businesses, some of the smaller firms, and, you know, without giving away things that might be in our report, you know, certain sectors where things seem to be, you know, tougher for young women at the start of their career, tougher for women taking career breaks for children.
Yeah, the critics say, though, that the Women in Finance Charter basically doesn't drive accountability, and that is at the root of why change has become so sluggish. I mean, also, the UK's been at the forefront in terms of gender pay gap reporting. There's still a 25% gender pay gap for women in the city, and it's worse for financial services than it is in other industries. So the issue is that the initiatives, the sign-up, the voluntary stuff, it's not making enough of a difference. It's not really driving accountability.
Well, that's exactly why we've opened this inquiry again, to look at that. There were recommendations we made back in 2018. Obviously, we'll refresh those recommendations. And I think that point has been well made in the evidence that we've been receiving. And so we will consider all of these points and report on this in the new year.
Is there commitment from the government for something more forceful in order to create change?
I think the commitment from the government is that this is an incredibly important sector to the UK. The government wants it to grow, thrive. You know, the taxes paid from this sector pay for a good chunk of our public services in the UK. It's a really important area. You highlighted the fact that the pay gap is still very wide. You know, that's a reflection of this is a very well paid, well remunerated sector. And in some sectors, like, for example, investment management, the pay gap is even wider. So it's extraordinary to see. In our report in venture capital in July, we put out something which said that of every a pound raised in venture capital in the UK, only 2 pence goes to women-led businesses. So there's a huge scope for even more success for this sector if they can get this right.
What about the banker bonus cap? Because the 2019 report said that that was a problem for this, and yet it's been reinstated or lifted.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that the regulators were very keen to see lifted. As you know, it was something that we could do now that we've left the European Union. From the regulators' point of view, they would much rather have a sector where the fixed costs and the overhead, as it were, of the sector is kept at a manageable level, and that people are only rewarded by bonuses when they do particularly well, and that can be paid from profits. And of course, there are other measures that have been taken to do with clawing back those bonuses, things that were done in reaction to the financial crash, which I think are entirely appropriate.
Oh, yeah, okay. But the issue with the banker bonus cap is that it's considered to have a particularly detrimental effect on women in finance, and that it's more difficult for them to get that. And so it sort of perpetuates the system. I mean, the other issue is, you know, would better attitudes towards work from home or childcare help? I mean, again, the Conservative government has pushed back very much against work from home, also seen as something that could help, you know, women in finance, or that does help women in finance.
Yeah, no, I well remember from my days in the city that it was that, you know, the women didn't ask for bonuses as loudly as the men did. Let's put it that way. So there's definitely a gender lens to look at that issue through. But in terms of you know, government action, a wide range of different things taking place. I think that you know, everyone wants to see this sector be very much positioned to grow and to succeed in the UK economy. It is such an important sector from the point of view of employment. Working from home, that's exactly why we looked at this from the lens of from 2018 onwards, because we have gone through this revolution. Has that made a difference? We've had a lot of interesting evidence in that regard. And obviously, I think from the point of view of individual firms in the financial services sector, there are lots of ways in which they can differentiate, lots of ways that they can make their offer more competitive by looking at their own internal policies.
Are they genuinely committed to change, Harriett, firms?
I think it varies, actually. I think from the point of view of retaining and attracting talent, it's often a lesson that has to be learned. You know, that you suddenly lose two of your great people because another firm offers you know, a better package around some of these issues. So I think it's good to have that competitive tension between firms, and the firms that get this right will be more successful in attracting and retaining the best people.
You're in charge of an incredibly important committee in terms of oversight and feedback. Your view on a different subject now, the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's Edinburgh Reforms, 31 key measures. You know, it was billed as Big Bang 2.0. I mean, literally comparisons to the Thatcher era, when financial services, as you well know, became so crucial to the UK economy. Your committee has called it basically a damp squib, which is a big indictment of the Chancellor. What do you think that he should be doing better in order to deliver reforms that actually have real world impact for the City of London?
Well, we put out a scorecard 1 year on, and it says that of the 31 measures, there are still some implementation left to do. Some of the measures have been implemented, but it's early days to see if those are having the impact. We had the Financial Conduct Authority chair and chief executive in front of our committee this week to see how they've started to embed their secondary objective of competitiveness, for example. I think that's an important structural reform. But yes, by reporting exactly a year after the announcement of the Edinburgh Reforms, we hope that we've given both the Treasury but also the regulators, a bit of an encouragement to follow through on the rhetoric and actually get these things implemented.
Yeah, certainly a wake-up call for them to do that. Harriett, we really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on to Bloomberg Radio and speaking to us. The Treasury Select Committee Chair, Harriett Baldwin.